Hello everyone, dear friends. In this video, I will tell you about the most crazy, interesting, and astounding facts about Chernobyl. I'll be honest, I was shocked. Let's go. The government immediately after the accident forbade the police to let the residents of Pripyat in or out. Telephone communications were cut off to prevent information about the accident from spreading throughout the USSR, and especially beyond its borders, as communist ideology did not allow this. Radiation levels in the reactor building immediately after the explosion reached 30,000 roentgens per hour. By comparison, the lethal dose to humans is 500 roentgens per hour. At 400 roentgens, only half survive. And the safe radiation dose is only 23 micro-roentgens per hour, or 0.00023 roentgens per hour. Graphite debris from the reactor core emitted 2,000 roentgens per hour, and firefighters who knew nothing about radiation picked it up with their bare hands and received severe burns and radiation sickness. In the same way, the first liquidators, young military men who were unaware of the consequences and in principle were not warned about radiation, removed graphite without proper equipment. Only a few lived even a couple of years. The amount of radiation that was released into the atmosphere that night was equivalent to 10 Hiroshima bombs. That is why the clothes of the firemen who were the first to arrive to extinguish the plant just a few minutes after the explosion emitted an incredible amount of radiation and continue to do so to this day. Now the radioactive background is 124 micro-roentgens per hour, which is also a lot. An accident similar to Chernobyl happened in 1975 at the Leningrad nuclear power plant, very close to the second capital of the USSR, the city of Leningrad, now called St. Petersburg. The accident was on a much smaller scale than Chernobyl, but if the government had not withheld information about the accident and its causes, the accident at Unit 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant could easily have been avoided. Many much smaller accidents at other nuclear power plants could have been avoided, and there were some. There would not have been many thousands of radiation casualties. The number of cancer patients would not have increased, and so on. As early as April 27th in Pripyat, mothers could be seen walking with their children in strollers. While in Germany, children were forbidden to go out to play in the street because of rising radiation levels. 15,000 children in Pripyat went to school as usual, walked, and did not even think about radiation, as did their parents. Meanwhile, the radiation was going off the scale of 50, 100, 200, and then 500 roentgens per hour from the air. Flying to the station, the dosimetrist received a lethal dose of 1,500 roentgens per hour. More than 500,000 people liquidated the consequences of the accident. The figures of those who worked in the exclusion zone vary, but the approximate number of liquidators is 600,000 people. Just think about these figures. 240,000 of them worked in the first year after the accident. One shift of a liquidator in the first years after the accident could last from 1 minute to 10 hours. Depending on the level of radiation. The work of each liquidator was different. Some heroically climbed to the roof of Unit 4 and dropped graphite fragments into the reactor while receiving monstrous doses of radiation, and others caught pets left in the zone. But the work of every liquidator is very important. The contribution of all people who worked in the zone cannot be overestimated. Without them, it is terrible to imagine what became of our world. This phone call is considered one of the worst in human history.
Третий и четвертый блок горит крыша в результате аварии взрыва.
Ой, давай. Так уже подтвердили?
Не подтвердили, авария там произошла у них. Это диспетчер Припяти сказала. Пожарная охрана. Алло, Иванков? Да. Значит, вы выезжаете в Припять? Алло? Да, я слышу. На атомную станцию выезжаете. Там третий и четвертый блок горит крыша. Алло, Полесская? Да. Вы, значит, выезжаете на атомную станцию, там горит крыша третьего и четвертого блока.
Evacuation began only 37 hours after the accident. Since the dosimeters that were at the station and in Pripyat were designed for radiation of only 3.44 rontgens per hour, the station management considered that such a value of radiation was not fatal and decided not to evacuate the population. Strangely, no one was confused by the fact that the dosimeters were off the scale. Let me remind you that at the time of the explosion, the radiation at the plant was over 30,000 rontgens per hour. The first wave evacuation affected only 10 kilometers from the plant. And this is a very small zone, as radiation was exceeded even in Kyiv, the capital of the Ukrainian SSR, and it was distant from Chernobyl, unlike the surrounding villages. The number of cancer cases increased, miscarriages became more frequent. People did not know or even guess about the radiation that was coming from the plant. They thought it was just the roof of Unit 4 burning. On the night of the accident, many people went to look at the burning plant on the bridge, later called the Bridge of Death. Those who went there did not survive. The magnitude of the tragedy would not have been so great if Viktor Bryukhanov had not used a fire hazardous and toxic material for the roof of Unit 4 called bitumen. Bitumen is a highly flammable substance that had been banned in the Soviet Union for 10 years at the time of the construction of Unit 4, but there were no materials to be used for the roof of the unit, so Bryukhanov ordered that it be used. At that temperature, the bitumen melted and began to stick to the boots of the firefighters who were extinguishing the plant, making it difficult for them to move and poisoning their lungs with toxic smoke. But Bryukhanov should not be blamed for everything. He had no choice. Either use the materials he had and deliver the station on time, or lose his job. If he had chosen the second way, the next boss in his place would have done the same thing that Viktor Bryukhanov did. People did not know that they were leaving their homes forever. They were told that it was a temporary evacuation. Legalov admitted that he understood that the evacuation was permanent. According to him, he did not want to create panic, so he announced only a temporary evacuation. On the one hand, it was the right thing to do, but on the other hand, people left, leaving behind valuables that they thought they would come back to soon. What do you think? Should the truth have been told or not? Let us know in the comments. Animals were not allowed to be taken with them. Yes, they were just left at home. The owners left the doors open so that the animals could get out and find food. Many died from radiation, others were caught by special liquidators. It is very sad because dogs and kittens were faithfully waiting for their owners. Dyatlov believed that the core was intact, although he himself had seen the graphite debris in the street. He reported the core's integrity to Moscow. This aggravated the government's actions. Just as aggravating was what was said about radiation of about 3 roentgens per hour, though it was far from that. Strangely, the station workers were not surprised that the hygrometer was off the scale. Nor were they surprised that the dosimeter at 200 roentgens per hour was off the charts either, and they simply trusted those readings. Such negligence just boggles the mind. Back to the myth about the integrity of the reactor. Dyatlov had a breakdown. He simply could not believe it, could not imagine that such a thing was possible, so he told the future in interviews. Only when he was lying in the hospital with radiation sickness and they brought him a photo of the destroyed reactor, he agreed and believed it. This entry on the evacuation of Pripyat.
Внимание, внимание! Уважаемые товарищи! Городской совет народных депутатов сообщает, что в связи с аварией на Чернобыльской атомной электростанции в городе Припяти складывается неблагоприятная радиационная обстановка. Партийными и советскими органами, воинскими частями принимаются необходимые меры. Однако, с целью обеспечения полной безопасности людей и в первую очередь детей, возникает необходимость провести временную эвакуацию жителей города в ближайшие населенные пункты Киевской области. Для этого каждому жилому дому сегодня, 27 апреля, начиная с 14:00 часов, будут поданы автобусы в сопровождении работника милиции и представителей горисполкома. Рекомендуется с собой взять документы, крайне необходимые вещи, а также на первый случай продукты питания. Руководителями предприятий и учреждений определен круг работников,
которые остаются на месте для обеспечения нормального функционирования города. Все жилые дома на период эвакуации будут охраняться работниками милиции. Товарищи, временно оставляя свое жилье, не забудьте, пожалуйста, закрыть окна, выключить электрические и газовые приборы, перекрыть водопроводные краны. Просим соблюдать спокойствие, организованность и порядок при проведении временной эвакуации.